Thank you for joining us today for our Electronic Retirement 101 sessions. This is session 2 of 4. Today's topics will be elected and appointed officers, independent contractors, post-retirement, system ineligibility, and terminations. Now, without further ado, Beverly Snyder, your Account Services Manager.
Now we're going to move on to elected and appointed officials for your organization. Now, eligibility for the elected and appointed are different between the Tier 1 and Tier 2, so we're going to talk about them separately. Let's start by talking about Tier 1. If I am an elected and appointed official, Tier 1, with your organization, I am going to qualify for the retirement benefits based on earnings only. The retirement office uses what we call our minimum earnings requirement. You will find a chart with those minimum earnings requirements in the employer guide. Now keep in mind that the minimum earning requirement changes every February 1st. It goes up a little bit more each year. It is currently at $1,018 a month. So if you have any Tier 1 elected and appointed who meet eligibility because they're making $1,018 a month, you need to go on and certify them eligible, and you need to provide them with those retirement benefits. Now the only exception to this rule is the elected and appointed officials who meet eligibility do have the option to exempt out. That has to be the choice of the employee. The employer cannot tell them that they have to exempt out of the retirement system. One thing I want to point out, just like eligibility, exempting in Tier 1 and Tier 2 mean two different things. So if I choose to exempt out because I'm a Tier 1 elected or appointed official and I've met eligibility, that means I am exempting completely out of the retirement system if I am Tier 1. Now, exemption in the Tier 2, you are not exempting out of the system. You are simply exempting out of the vesting period. So again, Tier 1 elected and appointed officials qualify based on earnings only. Now let's go to the Tier 2 elected and appointed officials. Eligibility for this category of individuals is determined based on a policy that your organization should have in place already. This went into effect on July 1st, 2011, and you are required to have a policy in place that will tell us, are your elected and appointed officials, Tier 2, full-time, eligible for retirement benefits, or are they part-time, ineligible for retirement benefits? You should have that policy in place already. We do test that in our compliance reviews. One thing I want to point out is if you have multiple positions and some are eligible and some are not, break that out in that policy for us. Maybe the mayor is full-time eligible, but your board members are part-time ineligible. It's okay, just break it out by position. And again, if they meet eligibility, they have the ability to exempt in the Tier 2, but it doesn't mean they're exempting out of the system. They are simply exempting out of the vesting period. Now we're going to talk about all of your ineligible employees. You know from up above, we talked about you have to certify everybody, including everybody who is ineligible. Even if you have a person who is only coming in to work for you 3 hours a week, you are still required to certify them ineligible because you must know if they are a post-retired employee. So we give you two ways to certify all of your ineligible employees. You can go online and do them individually, one at a time, or you can do our batch process, which will allow you to do 99 at a time. Now, why would you certify somebody ineligible? Maybe they don't meet the hour requirement, they don't get any benefits. Maybe you're hiring them as a temporary employee, which means you are hiring them to come in to work for your agency to do one job, just come in to do a specific job, and they're going to be there less than 6 months and they're gone. And so that would be your definition of a temporary temporary employee. Now keep in mind, we allow your ineligible employees to make contributions to a 401k with their own money as long as you, the employer, allow it. So that's your option there, okay? Next, let's talk about what a post-retired employee is. Now, a post-retired employee is one who has met eligibility, has qualified to receive a pension check from our office, and is now returning to work with a participating employer anywhere across the state. Keep in mind with these post-retired employees, they don't have to just retire from your organization. They can retire from any of the 471 participating employers in our system. If they come back to work for you after their retirement date, they are a post-retired employee, and you, the employer, have to know what your responsibilities are for managing this group of people. One thing I want to point out is that it doesn't matter if they come back to work for you for 1 hour or 100 hours. If they come back to work and you're compensating them, they are a post-retired employee. Now, with these laws for the post-retired employees, we want to break them into two categories. And so we're going to start with talking about post-retired employees that were hired with your organization prior to July 1st, 2010. Obviously, all of these post-retired employees have to be certified on the URS website. As we talked about above, we're certifying everybody. You must report all post-retired employees on your contribution file coming into our office. Because they were hired prior to July 1st, 2010, they are grandfathered in, and this group of employees you would not pay the amortization rate on. Now, with the employees that were hired and in place before July 1st, 2010, you are allowed to provide them an employer savings plan. So a 401k plan. What Title 49 says is if you are providing an employer savings plan to post-retired employees hired before July 1st, 2010, it has to be a qualified plan approved by the board. So what that means is it has to be in a 401k plan coming into the retirement office. So if you're sending money for your post-retireds anywhere else, you might want to make that change. We do test that in our audits and make sure that you're sending that money into a 401k plan through your contribution file into URS. A couple of things I want to make sure we have a good understanding on when it comes to post-retired employees hired before July 1st, 2010. If you are choosing to provide them with an employer savings plan, then you have to make sure you're aware of the normal cost rate. You cannot exceed the normal cost rate. Where do you find that information? You're going to go back into the Employee Management Center. Over there on the left-hand side, click on the tab that says Rates. The rate sheet, you're going to scroll your finger across the top. There's going to be a column that says normal cost rate for post-retired employees hired prior to July 1st, 2010. On the left-hand side, you're going to find the fund that that employee is working in. You're going to make your fingers meet. That's where you're going to find what the normal cost rate is. You cannot exceed the normal cost rate for post-retired employees hired prior to July 1st, 2010. If you do exceed that amount, then you are putting that post-retired employee in violation of the post-retired rules. Now, the only exception to the rule is if you are a Social Security exempt employer, then you are allowed to give them the normal cost rate, and in addition to that, the amount that you would normally be submitting to Social Security. Only exception to the rule. Now let's move to the second group of post-retired employees, and these are post-retired employees hired after July 1st, 2010. The things that you need to understand about this group is if I retire and I return to work 0 to 60 days from the date of my retirement, then my retirement check is going to be canceled. I cannot return to work with any participating employer within 60 days of the date of my retirement. The second category are those employees who return to work between 61 days and 1 year. So they can return to work in this category. They can continue to receive their pension check, but there's a few limitations that they have on them. Number one, they're going to have an income limitation. The income limitation is in the ballpark of about $15,000 or 50% of their final average salary, whichever is lower. The second thing is they must be in a non-benefited position. So vacation, sick leave, medical insurance, dental insurance, they cannot receive any of the normal benefits that you provide to your other employees. And with this category, you would not be required to pay the amortization rate on them. One thing I want to point out is if you hire a post-retired employee who falls into this category, they always stay in this category. The next group are those that retire and stay out of our system for a full year. If they do that, then they do not have the income limitation. They do not have the limitation on as far as benefits that they can receive. But with this group of people, you must pay the amortization rate based on the position that you've hired them in. The only way that an employee can move from the 61-day to the 365-day mark into the over 1 year mark is they must terminate all employment with participating employers and be out of our system for a full year. Okay? The post-retired rules get a little tricky, so if you have any questions, I encourage you to give our office a call. Next, I want to talk about the employees that you consider independent contractors and 1099 employees. What Title 49 says, and there you'll see at the bottom of the page, Utah Code 49-11-1202, reemployment includes work performed on a contract for a participating employer if the retiree is listed as the contractor or is the owner, partner, or principal of the contractor. Now, we're not telling you that you cannot have independent contractors or that you cannot pay employees as a 1099 employees, but what we are telling you is that if any of them are post-retired, all of those post-retired laws that we just talked about apply. And so it's really important that you understand and that you are looking to make sure that you're finding out if any of those individuals are receiving a pension from our office. One side note that I would like to point out is if you have employees that are full-time eligible employees and you are making contributions to the retirement office for them, and then they're doing extra work for you on the side and you're paying them with the 1099, keep in mind if they are in the public employee system and you are submitting contributions because they've met eligibility, anything that they are doing for you and you're paying on a 1099, that's considered extra work for extra pay, and that is reportable compensation. Now, as we talk about independent contractors and 1099 employees, we understand that this is frustrating. We understand that this is new information for you. And we here at the retirement office are doing what we can to help make managing this a little bit easier for you. So what we want to make you sure that you're aware of is that we have developed an independent contractor management center. So if you go to that URS website for employers and you log in, over on the left-hand side, you're going to see a tab that says Independent Contractor Management Center. That is where you are going to go to type in the name and the social security number of the independent contractor that you are looking to hire, and use the information that you are provided to see if they are a post-retired employee. If you have independent contractors that are reporting to you using a federal tax ID number, then we encourage you to have some type of a disclosure in place notifying them that you are a participant of Utah Retirement Systems, and if they are receiving a pension check from the retirement office, they should probably let you know that. Now, in identifying your independent contractors, they're typically paid through your accounts payable. One thing that you should be asking yourself when you have employees that come in and say they want to be an independent contractor is, Are you their sole service provider? Are you the only one they are providing services to? If you have an employee that says they're an independent contractor, but you are the only person that they're providing the service to and they're reporting under that social security number, then more than likely the IRS is going to say that they are actually an employee. So we caution you to look at that very carefully. And the other thing that we're asking you to do, again, include that disclosure to all of your independent contractors that you're paying with the federal tax ID number. Even though they have a federal tax ID number, they could still be in violation of the post-retired laws. Now, for you as the employer, even if they are an independent contractor or a 1099 employee, you are required to certify them on the URS website if they are post-retired. You have to have all of your post-retired employees on that contribution file. So even if you're paying me with a 1099, you have to include them on that contribution file. So let's keep going. A few of these, we've talked about this, but I just want to point it out again. We encourage you to maintain evidence that you have followed IRS guidelines in determining your independent contractors. Don't just assume because they tell you they want to be paid with a 1099. Do your homework, make sure that they qualify to be a 1099 employee or an independent contractor. And again, we've talked about that disclosure, so we encourage you to do that so that you are covering yourself. Now, here's where we're going to talk next about Utah Code 49-11-1207 because this came into effect on May 10th, 2016. This is the reason that understanding who all of your post-retired employees is so important. Prior to May 10th, 2016, if we found an employee in violation of post-retired rules in any way, we would put all of that responsibility back on that employee, that post-retired employee. So their pension check would be stopped and then they would be required to pay the retirement office back all of the money that they had received from us from the date that they were in violation of those post-retired rules. But now, effective May 10th, 2016, the legislature now says that if the employer, so you, have not done your part correctly, that it is now possible for you to also be held responsible for the money that they owe us back. So what does that mean? That means you are required to certify everybody so that you know if they're post-retired, and you're required to have everybody on that contribution file. So if you don't know that, if you haven't done your part and you don't know that they're post-retired and then they become in violation and they owe our office back $100,000, they could have a good argument saying that you were partially negligent, so you have to be partially responsible in paying that money back. Really important that you understand that so that you're looking for every single post-retired employee. Now let's move into phased retirement. Phased retirement is a 5-year pilot program. It became effective on January 1st, 2017. And what the phased retirement plan does is it allows employees to retire, receive 50% of their monthly pension, and continue to work half-time or part-time for your agency. Now, in order to allow your employees to be in phased retirement, your agency has to agree to participate in this program. So that's the first step. Your agency has to agree to be in the phased retirement program. You need to adopt a policy, and in that policy, it needs to define which positions within your agency are allowed to participate in phased retirement. You don't have to offer it to everybody. An example would be maybe you only want to allow your managers to be in phased retirement so they can pass on all of their knowledge as they're going out the door. If I happen to be in a position within your organization that makes me eligible for phased retirement and I elect to do it, then there would need to be a written agreement between you, the employer, and me, the employee, outlining what my phased retirement is going to look like. The next thing you need to understand is if I am in phased retirement with your organization, I have to receive the exact same benefits as your part-time or half-time employees. So if your policy says that part-time employees receive no benefits and I come in as a phased retiree, I am not eligible to receive any benefits. Next, no employer provided retirement benefits, so no savings plans whatsoever, nothing that resembles a retirement account. You have to include all of your phased retirees on your contribution file, and you have to pay the amortization rate. Now, as the employee, what does phased retirement look like for the employee? Number one, they have to make the decision to be a phased retiree at the time of retirement. So when they come into our office and say, I'm ready to retire, here's my retirement date. Oh, by the way, I want to do the paperwork for phased retirement at the same time. They have to have been employed with your agency full-time for 4 years prior to the date that they retire, and following retirement, they must return to work with you within 120 days of their retirement date. That gives them time to go on a vacation, plant a garden, whatever they want to do, but they must return within 120 days. While they are in phased retirement, they are only going to be receiving 50% of their pension check. So their pension will be calculated based on a full 100% pension check. But if they elect to go into phased retirement, that would simply be cut in half. Next, they must be working for you 20 hours a week. No more, no less. It's got to be 20 hours a week. We understand that they might have a sick day here or there, or they might want to do a family vacation, and we understand that that's going to happen, but their normal schedule has to be 20 hours a week. So you can't slide that up and let them be working 30 hours a week, and you can't take it down to 15. The other thing with the employee is they cannot be working for another participating employer anywhere if they are in phased retirement with you. Next, I just want to clarify, now we've talked about them having to return to work within the 120 days. If they choose to take some time off between retirement and coming back to work, they can do that. But while they are in phased retirement, they would still only be receiving 50% of that pension check. Now, a couple of things, just reminders. If you have employees who are in phased retirement, you are going to continue to report them on your contribution file. You're going to continue to report their earnings. You're going to code them as a P. And again, you must include the amortization rate for this group of people. Now, how do I start receiving 100% of my pension check? Well, that happens when their phased retirement is terminated. The retiree and the employer are required to go and terminate this individual. You, the employer, would go to the Employee Management Center and terminate them. Understand that when you terminate somebody from phased retirement, that is irrevocable. They will never be able to go back and say, I want to be in phased retirement again. The minute that you go online and terminate them and notify our office, then their monthly retirement check will go up to the 100%. Now, the minute that this phased retiree is terminated from phased retirement, all of the normal post-retirement laws that we just talked about would go into place, meaning they would now have to terminate employment for 60 days, and when they came back, they would be broken into those different categories with some of those limitations. So don't terminate them out of phased retirement and let them come back to work in any capacity for 60 days.
Thank you for joining us for session 2 of 4. We hope you found this information valuable. Please join us for session 3, which will include website navigation and contribution reporting. If you have any additional questions on any of the topics that we've discussed, please feel free to contact one of us in the compliance department. Thank you.